Let me welcome Professor Massimo Warglien from Foscari University, Venezia, for agreeing to come over and talk here on his work on hierarchical decision making produces persistent differences in learning performance. And you know, I had a little bit of EU from him, whatever I could understand, that these are fascinating areas of work on which you are working. So I'm looking forward to your talk, and I hope everybody here will enjoy this. So welcome again, and the floor is up.
Okay, thanks a lot, and I'll try to use well my time so that you don't have, sorry, just to be sure I can access it here. Just give me last second. Yes, so I work in a management department. At the same time, I've been working also with organizational economics, and this is a sort of work that is across the two fields. It addresses clearly. Okay? Yeah. Should I shout more? Okay. Can you hear me? Yes. Here, maybe. Also to the throat. Okay. And it addresses really issues related to hierarchy, right? And in particular, one thing I've always been fascinated by, which is the problem of learning and adaptation. And in particular, how adaptation works in hierarchical settings, which, as you will see, are typically complicated by a few important things. One is that in hierarchy things happen at different timescales. And the second one is that they happen at different levels of information aggregation. The combination of the two, as you will see, produces some peculiar effects which are really the core of this presentation. So those of you which are interested in organization theory or organizational economics will find this. Those of you which are also interested in sort of more technical issues of modeling learning, for example through machine learning or whatever it is, might find also interesting the fact that there's an experimental part of it and there's a modeling part of it which is based on a particular type of model in which hierarchical learning is obtained by combining two different types of learning, supervised and unsupervised learning, producing sort of hybrid model which I think is decently new and has some interesting implications. So, the point is, first of all, why hierarchical decision processes? Of course, we know that we live in a world of organizational hierarchies, right? And as you know, the fundamental issue with hierarchical decision making is a sort of division of labor in the way informational decisions are treated, in which the higher level has to set sort of decision premises for operational sort of behavior at the lower level. This is what the key idea, of course, of Herb Simon's is very early time. And the basic idea is thus that with this kind of division of labor within the learning process, how do hierarchies can adapt, especially when they have to deal with a new task, an unknown task, which is the subject of this talk. So how the hierarchical arrangement of division of labor in information processing and decision making affects the way you learn to deal with a new task. So what's the problem here, right? Well, you know, one of the fundamental reasons, according to an old tradition, at least in bundle rationality, why we have hierarchies is that we are cognitively limited. And one of the fundamental limitations is attention. We know that very well from psychology, and even, I would say, hardcore economists are now getting more and more interested in the idea that attention is a limited resource. We cannot attend, we cannot look at everything, so we have to be selective, right? So organizations are big devices to organize and allocate attention at different levels. And that was one fundamental idea. But, and this helps, of course, to solve some issues related to our own limited cognitive resources. At the same time, of course, this advantage is in a way limited by the fact, as we shall see, that in these hierarchical settings a big issue arises, which is feedback can be extremely ambiguous. Think to many analyses of nuclear accidents, right? Basically, they tell you always a similar story. Once you look at the accident initially, you say, okay, operational people were confused with the wrong thing and did a lot of mistakes. But if you analyze them, then you discover that such mistakes were in part created by wrong decision premises, by higher level management, that produce very hard to understand feedback, right, from what you're doing. And the hierarchical levels were in turn confused by what people were doing and gave wrong instruction that created more, and there was sort of a vicious circle of mistakes. So the problem is whenever you have a hierarchy and there's a mistake, something that goes wrong, there's an error, you never know, right, if the bad outcome is due to an operational mistake, to wrong premises or whatever, right? And typically this gets into very heavy vicious circles. So the approach we took was to ask ourselves, okay, so what happens? How do hierarchies deal with feedback and its potential ambiguity? And what are the potential implications for organizational performance? Right? And we did it by combining two tools. One is lab experiments. I'm assuming everybody is more or less familiar with the idea, and computational models of learning. Okay, so that's the fundamental idea. So we examined in the lab hierarchical dyads. One might raise hand and say, come on, organization are not dyads. Yes, it's true, but we kept it simple in a way, very much the traditional, if you want, organizational economics. It's a sort of principal agent little word, right? In which the task of the high-level agent is to set premises for the lower-level operational agent, where this decision premises are basically focusing his attention on the subset of the dimensions of the stimulus coming. And the operation task is really making correct estimation based on this limited information, which has been filtered, right? Very much like, I know, in the accounting department gets filtered information, in the production gets filtered information. At the same time, we try to construct a model, hierarchical learning, to try to not only fit the data, which is always a good thing, and explain them, but as you will see, also to try to solve some puzzling evidence coming from the lab and provide an interpretation to it. So we use the model also to interpret the experimental data and to solve some sort of ambiguities that were coming from the experimental results. So let me be short about the experiment, because as usual we could spend hours describing the details, but it is very simple. We have two decision makers, the boss and the operational one, right? Let's call them H agent and L agent. For those of you which are interested in the sociology of management journals, the reason why we didn't call this a principal agent, as would be quite natural, is that our first submission was to a prestigious journal in our field, and the chief editor said with immediate best rejection, saying, principal agent models are demoded, out of fashion. Okay. Surprising, but so we made this little terminology, which I think is actually good. So H stands for high, of course, and L for low. What's the point? They have a task that I will describe in a moment, and the H agent has only one thing to do, which is to set the decision premises by filtering the information coming to the operational L agent. On the other side, the L agent has to learn to improve direct performance in a task, which, as you can see, is a simple kind of task of estimation given some information.
What is the adaptation here?
The adaptation is that in the beginning they have no idea, as you will see, about the parameters of the task. I will describe them in the next slide. So they have to learn those parameters. So as you will see, the task is very similar to a sort of learning the parameters of regression, right? In that sense, but they have no idea in the beginning. So adaptation is really, you have a new word, you don't know how it works, and you have to adapt to it. The learning model, but I will postpone that to jump a little bit, will be based on different ideas. So the idea is that the H agent, the boss, is only getting, in a way, payoffs, right, as information, aggregate payoffs. So his decision have to be based only on that, which implies that, as we will see, we will apply reinforcement learning, which is typical unsupervised learning tool for modeling how you learn directly from the L. On the other hand, the L agent is learning from a lot of target experience and has sort of targets to which he can compare what he observed, what is called sometimes supervised learning. So the L agent is modeled with a different type of model, delta rule, which is a classical tool in neural net literature for those of you that have a background in engineering, maybe. Or very similar to what economists would call kind of least square learning, learning kind of models. So here's the structure of the experiment. It looks awful but it's simple, so give me just 1 minute to say what's inside. So there's an H agent. Okay, first of all, the task has 3 dimensions. So as I told you, the task is estimating the value of an input that has 3 features, imagine, right? But you don't know what's the relative weight of each feature. So to get a sense of the value, let's say, of these features, you need to guess what is the relative weight. That's what you have to learn. You don't know that. So there are 3 features, and there are 3 possible filters. So in this filter, for example, you hide the 3rd feature to your lower level agent. You just give 2 of the 3 possible features. Here you hide the intermediate one, and here you hide the first one. What the boss has to do is to select a feature. So the boss decides what you see as a lower level. The lower level agent has a more difficult task because what he sees is, of course, numbers, the input feature values, right? And he sees only 2 out of 3, maybe a 45 and 66, then a 3 and next stimulus 3 and 87, 34, 23, and so on. And who has to estimate, to guess what's the value of this combination of values, right? And that's the fundamental task he has. So it's a classical imagined prediction. Imagine someone looking at the terrain, trying to understand what's the value of the terrain given a few features, or whatever it is, right? So basically what the lower level operational agent has to do is to learn, given some partial input, to estimate what's the value of what he observes. Okay. So these are the sort of ways you could formalize this setup, but is the setup clear enough? Because this is just a way to write them in a more formal way, right? So you have each time, what you have is an input vector coming from the world, the organization, which has 3 feature values, feature 1, feature 2, feature 3, each value between 0 and 100. You have a true value, which is given by weighting each feature, but the weights are unknown to both the high and the low level agents. That's what they have to learn. That's why they don't know the environment. They don't know the value of these weights. And this determines the value of the input, what they are trying to estimate. In our experiment, in particular, we gave very different weights to different features. So one is highly informative, 0.9. One has low relevance, 0.1 is the weight, and one has a sort of intermediate value. So we try to capture the idea that it's different relevance for different features. And the task is estimating the true value of this. The payoff is related directly to your mistake. The more accurate is your estimate, the more you get money. Incentives are alike here, so both the L and the H agent gets the same reward. There's no conflict of interest of any kind. So it's not a classical principal agent model, it's a collaborative coordination task in a learning process. Okay, participants were, in this case, 22 pairs of H and L agents. Oops, I'm sorry, I'm confusing both pairs. Okay, as I told you, what makes a hierarchy is time and feedback aggregation, right? So here the idea is that information differs in time scale and detail, right? So the L agents has, of course, a lot of trials. He sees a lot of inputs, although partly blinded by the boss, right? And he learns to make this kind of thing. He sees what the prediction, and he learns after that which mistake he made. So basically what he gets at the end is, I try something, I make an estimate, it's wrong, I know how distant it is from the true one. On the other side, the H agents receive a much coarser information on a broader time scale. So he gets only each 5 rounds aggregate information from his department, right, on what was the payoff, canonically, or if you want the aggregate estimation error. So he has aggregate information over aggregate time as any normal aggregate. Now, measure of performance. We had 3 types of performance measures. One is for the whole organization, and it's the estimation error. How good you do, which is your payoff. Right? For the H agent, is how good is he at disclosing information? So how good is the filter that he's disclosing to the low level agent, right? So, and as you have seen, it can be either, if he, for example, chooses the wrong filter, if you choose the wrong filter, which has no value, like this one. Imagine that you select those two and you hide this. Of course, you are providing little information to your agent because data become very noisy to ignore those things. And this is, of course, the best filter in which you give only what matters and you ignore what doesn't. Okay. For the L agent, on the other side, we try to have a measure that was independent of the quality of the filter he was receiving. And this is called information adjust estimation error. I will skip the details, but the idea is that, of course, you measure how much you are wrong given how much you can be right. So if you get good information, of course, you can be much better than if you get bad one. So we try to normalize, if you want, the mistake of the lower level operational agent. Now, what happens here? First of all, let's look at the overall organization performance, right? What happens is represented at the aggregate level by the green light, and here we have the classical learning curve. No surprise, nothing really fancy. That's exactly what you would expect, nothing special. But if you look at the data, what really struck us was that a huge heterogeneity in the behavior of the pairs. And in particular, the fact that you could easily split the whole set of pairs in two subgroups that were actually split pretty well by the median, right? One, which is learning really well, you see, goes pretty close to perfect learning at the end of 20 epochs, which means 100 trials for the operational agent. But the other half were stopping to learn at some point, you see, and they were performing poorly in a very persistent way. Actually, that was really something striking to us because it was clearly sort of bifurcation, different fates of learning for different dyads, right? And the question was, of course, why? And by doing some statistical analysis of the data, you find out actually that you can easily reject the idea that the distribution of outcomes is unimodal. So you really have two groups, right? You can split at least in two groups, and the median does a pretty nice work in splitting them, which allows you to compare your two groups and see in which way they differ. So the really surprising thing was not that you had different outcomes that might be quite normal, but that it was a bimodal thing. You didn't have uniform or normal distribution, but a clearly bimodal one. So what's going on here is the interesting question. Why is it bimodal? Now, one could say maybe it's related to what the lower level agents learn. But the surprising thing was that, forget about the spaghetti kind of thing, it tells you that if you take the green line and all dyads, the deadlock dyads, those that don't learn, and the learning dyads, those that do succeed, the L agent has the same information adjusted estimation error. You cannot statistically distinguish those, right? Which means that apparently the H agent does more or less what you can do, the low agent, sorry, more or less what you can do independently of the final group in which he is. So the problem is that apparently, given what they receive, all L agents behave in a similar way.
Massimo question.
Yes.
So what's told to the agents about their relative roles? Do they know something about some hierarchical order? Or
Yeah, they have. It's common knowledge of, the structure is common knowledge. They know there's a principal, they know there's an agent, they know what the principal does, which is provide a filtered information. Everything is transparent.
The description is in terms of tasks, so you also use the language of high and low level.
We say there's an agent and decide a filter, and you have to make these decisions.
So you don't necessarily call them hierarchically?
No, we don't want to create a sense, if I remember well, but the instructions are now on the paper, but if I remember well, we try to keep a neutral so that that would not induce a sort of sense he's the boss, I'm independent. No.
So whatever you're saying here is actually this role differentiation based on the task structures.
Yes. Okay, so apparently, yes.
Sorry, I missed that. How did you distinguish learning dyads with the deadlock dyads? How do we?
On the ground of the former thing, so you see, we saw, actually you can see it pretty well here, I think, that if you look at the performance of the groups, it clearly splits into subgroups. And also statistically it makes sense because standard tests reject individuality. Right? So it legitimates the idea of splitting into subgroups. This is the learning one, this is the one that never learns. Oh, sorry, vice versa actually, because this is the estimation error.
So it's based on the estimation error, right?
On the estimation,
right. So
which is the performance of the organization.
Right, so then I was worried, like, then there was a slide next one where it says they're indistinguishable.
The L agents are essential.
L agents.
Not the H one.
Okay.
Because the H ones apparently do differ a lot. If you look at the typical measure of how good is the boss, right, which is how well he discloses information, what you see that while the learning dyads do well, also, the non-learning, the deadlock one, have principles that basically fail to disclose information better than random. So it's really poor, because random would have been in this case 0, 6 and something, and that's where they basically, you see there's no significant improvement in how well they disclose information. Right? So first result is quite clear. There are two groups, two subgroups, and these two subgroups are related apparently to the choice of the filters. So a naive and quick information would be, okay, so it's a problem. Our subjects differ maybe in skills, maybe in other things, right? And the bosses are sometimes clever, sometimes stupid, and that's a problem. Okay, maybe, that's one plausible interpretation, but
also these are different tasks. So in some sense, the task of the boss is a harder one.
yeah.
Because they have to estimate based on the performance of the lower agent, what filter they should show. So in the easier task, you don't see skill differentiation. In the complex task, you see it.
No, I agree with you. There's much more ambiguity in the fact that you receive higher aggregation coarse information, and of course the timing. Yeah, it is different. But as you will see, there's no need to throw stones on the H subjects, right? And we were very unhappy actually that we couldn't, when we did the experiments beforehand, measure some sort of measure of skills or intelligence or whatever. We didn't do it.
So sorry, I'm just adding up. So is that H agents which is causing problem, or it is the learning agents who are failing to understand?
In this case, apparently the L agents do as good as they can, as you can see from here.
Right. So
They come pretty close to optimal learning. Actually, the optimal level of learning would be something more or less here. So they come quite close. After a while, after about 6, 7 rounds, they do as much as they do given the information they have. Which means that if you have bad information, you can make larger errors, of course. But, and that's important, if you make larger errors, your boss gets also confusing information. And that's where the story will go through. So the point is, of course, right, since L agent performance doesn't differ the lower level between the two groups, the natural inference would be, okay, it's a problem with the boss. Right? Maybe because it's harder, maybe because it's not smart enough, whatever. But we were suspicious about it because, of course, lower level agents were doing as well as they could given information, but given bad information, you give bad feedback. So there's a sort of potential vicious circle here of feedback that arises, very much like the nuclear plant's accidents. Right? So we started asking ourselves, are we sure, is that the right interpretation? And modeling helped us a lot to try to give at least a tentative answer to this question. So we asked ourselves, imagine that you model the behavior of these agents and you try to fit as well as you can what you observe, right? Then in simulations, you can run many simulations in which all the agents have the same initial skills, same parameters, right? So the question is, do we need really to differentiate the parameters, the skills, the ability of the H agent to get what we observe, or you don't? If you don't, you know that you don't need agents, bosses with different skills to produce such different outcomes. And this anticipates a little bit my conclusion, but I want to be quick enough if you don't mind. So here's the hierarchical learning model that we try to use to reproduce the experimental results. So it has two different learning components, right? One is the boss, and the boss, as you know, has to choose between 3 filters. And fundamentally, he only has payoff as an information, which implies basically that what he can do is to use what is called traditional reinforcement learning. Are you all familiar with the idea of reinforcement learning? Okay. So basically, you do something, you try an action, and the better you get, the more you reinforce the probability. And the probability is through the classical product, logic, Boltzmann, soft max, whatever rule, right, which is also familiar with human intuitions, actually. And this is a classical rule that basically makes it more or less likely that you, given that something is more attractive than something else, it makes a matter of probability that you'll pick the most attractive thing. You're not sure to get it. And how much you are noisy, this choice depends on the gamma parameter, which is the free parameter that we have to estimate actually. The L agent has a very different rule because he gets more detailed information. And here we use what is called sometimes supervised learning, and the simplest and more classical supervised learning rule, which is so-called delta rule, which is classic in the neural networks literature since the early 60s actually. And it's very simple, you know, it's the idea that given some weights that you give to each feature, you change a little bit, right, the weight by a factor of lambda, given the difference between the true value that you can see afterwards and the estimated value that you provided times the value of the input, which is sort of scaling situation of the single factor of the single feature. So these are two classical rules. There's not much to say about those. We didn't invent nothing. The creative side was really assembling them in hierarchical way. Sorry? X is the value of each feature. So that means that if a feature has a high value, you learn more from such feature than if a feature has a low value, right? This X as an intuitive explanation, it tells you learn more from more salient features, and a nice mathematical property, it ensures that this is minimizing square errors.
That value is determined through the weights that is provided, unlike how
the V value is your estimate of the weights, yes. So my intuition of the weight of each feature is V, VI, J, K, whatever it is, right? And I change it over time as a function of the mistake I made, of the aggregate mistake I made, times the strength of the input on a single feature.
So do these weights change over time or are they constant?
Sorry?
Do the weights also change over time or are they constant?
For the L agent, the weight change each round, each trial.
Then my feedback will be then determined based on how what I consider as the proper weight in the previous one.
Okay, I think it asking the true weights actually. The true weights are.
Well, the true weights are always the same for all the experiment. What changes each time is the value of the features. So each time you see a different input, and this is independently distributed and blah. Yeah, no, the true weights are always the same. So the word is stationary. You can learn a stationary word. That would be much more complicated if they change. But you don't know when you change your own word. And also lambda in our model doesn't change over time. So you learn at the same speed for all.
I have one question here.
Yeah.
For the H agent learning model, the way it has been defined, for example, the agents who are choosing low information filter, the percentage error in their case will be higher. So automatically the adjustment which will happen will be higher for them. So in that sense, are not we feeding the model to suit what we want? Because AI plus 1 is AI plus 100 percentage error. So if
you make larger errors, so you will fluctuate more and more.
So if I have chosen a low information filter in the previous period,
yeah,
the error will be higher, and automatically my adjustment will be more.
Yeah.
So that is how we have designed the model.
Well, that's what the model does actually. As a result, if I get lower information, I get a lot of noise. So I try to start fitting noise and hunting. You know, I'm chasing noise in a way, which is actually what happens, I think, in the experiment. So in our experiment, to anticipate the conclusion, what happens is that people that fail, spend their time chasing noise. That's why they don't grow. Because they produce noise to each other in a way. Okay, so very quickly, this is the model structure. So there's a model in which you have to decide the filter. And then the filter determines what of the input stimulus the lower agencies, only 2 out of 3 inputs, then he aggregates them, given some sort of subjective weight. Sorry, that should be not W actually. And then the error feedback, right, affects, of course, their estimate of the weights. On the other side, right, what you have is that the aggregate error at the end of the period is fed back to the boss that updates his attractions and learns by payoff. So this is the simple structure of the model. It's a 2-layer model with a boss that learns from payoff and a lower level one that learns from actual observation of errors. Okay, the model is run, it's exactly the same game people play, there's no difference, it's all identical, nothing changes. So it's just an artificial agent playing what human subjects play. And the model's parameters are calibrated via grid search, which is the technique to find the value of the parameters of the model that best fit the data. And minimizing a conventional measure of error in a repeated experiment, mean square deviation, which is fundamentally minimizing the deviations of your prediction from the observed result. Right? This is widely used measure, but I will skip the details. It has been actually axiomatized, showing it's a very, and it's used in most studies of learning. Okay, and we estimated the parameters taking into account two types of errors: the experimental estimation error and the rate of disclosed information of the two pairs. So we try to fit the sum of those errors. We ran 20,000 artificial principal agent pairs. Okay, usual thing. When you run simulation, you don't have a problem with subjecting everything. Okay, what happens? First thing, the model can fit pretty beautifully what you observe. The green line, I hope you can see it, is the empirical observations. This is the best fit we can obtain, which is maybe not surprising, but it's pretty good on average, and these are the usual 5% confidence intervals. Right? So as you can see, it's pretty easy to capture, but this is not shocking because capturing learning curves is not necessarily difficult. Right? As you will see, the model has more virtues. Because if you split in two according to the median, the simulation results, and that's much more interesting, you get this and this. So you get the same trajectories fundamentally to observe the aggregate level. And please, this is not something done by trying to minimize the error when you estimate. These parameters were estimated only on the aggregate thing. Oops. Okay. So the where is it? Sorry. This is the way you fit parameters, right? So the split in two is a kind of prediction of the model, even the way you have fitted the parameters, right? And it does pretty nicely in this case. And it produces what is even more interesting, the same thing, which is a bimodal distribution. So the nice result is that the hierarchical learning model produces the same kind of bimodal fates of learning in the future, which is very surprising. Trivial result. Okay. Right? Not only, but you get also that if you look at the disclosed information, you get again a really good fit, although a little bit you see lower than the actual information disclosed. Right? And you get again two different trajectories, which are again split in a bimodal way. So you capture decently, I wouldn't say perfectly, but pretty decently, also in this case, distribution of the two subgroups, right, which is became quite nice. And again, the bimodality is the important result of the simulation. So apparently you get it. You can also predict other things, like this is prediction, because we didn't fit the parameters in this. Like how frequently that's a switching rate, the principal changes the filter, right? And here again, if you pretty decently the observed thing, and in particular, you have again two things. That is, you can observe in the experiment, human subjects in the non-learning group switch too often. They are very neurotic. They go from one filter to the other one, which is a sort of circle of confusion that I described. And again, you can fit that reasonably well. So what are the implications, to make it very short, right? The implications are that initial choices, which are necessarily a little bit blind because the principal doesn't know about the work is facing the value of filters, are sufficient to explain performance differences in the two subgroups, right, and their persistence over time. That doesn't mean they are the only explanation, but they are good enough to give an explanation. You don't need to call for a stupid principle to explain this bifurcation of results. You only need to call for the dynamics of feedback between principal and lower level agent. That's the first important point that we learned from the conjunction of the experiment and the simulation model. And in particular, hierarchical decision processes, due to the very nature of the feedback they produce, are extremely path dependent, and they tend to literally bifurcate, if you want, into different types of trajectories, right? In which both agents, the lower and the high, are really locked in this sort of vicious circle, which is characterized by this. If the H agent initially starts to do the wrong thing, the L agents get confused and start making big mistakes. Big mistakes, feedback on a confused boss, and so on.
Is there some probability of dropping out of that, the vicious cycle trajectory into the other?
Okay, the interesting story, not so much. It's in particular we tried I don't have here the details, but we try to see the correlation between early moves and final outcome. And what you find that in the very first rounds, there's no correlation. So the really first moves are bad for anybody. But let's say from the 5th to the 10th period, or chunk of periods for the principle, if you observe error or even the switch rate in that phase, and you correlate it with the final outcome, the correlation is very high and highly significant. So what happens, let's say, between the 4th and 10th period, locks the fate of the pair. And then it's very hard to escape.
But even if you run this for lots of periods and you don't see the upper line falling, which is what I guess you're saying, right? You don't see it.
Of course, we ran simulation for thousands of people per period, and it's very stable. Once you get in the vicious circles, you're infused forever.
So it's actually going to track that. It's not just noise. So there's this kind of metastable state there.
Also, there's sort of bifurcation in the outcomes, if you wish. It's some distribution around it, because it's clearly bimodal in the long run. No, this is a very surprising result. So it's pretty stable, unfortunately.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just building on that. I'm a bit worried. Like if you start on the wrong initial choice, do we have any ways of getting back? That's,
not so much because you are in two, the only, actually, we run simulation which we are imposing an order of choices, and you can see that the first 10 choices were clearly deciding the fate of the simulation. We don't know, of course, in the experiment because we have only those data.
Could the quality of feedback, could that change the learning outcome?
Of course, changing the type of feedback the principal gets might change a little bit the outcome, because I think part of the problem is this aggregation process. But that's exactly what hierarchies are about, right?
Or changing gamma as well.
Sorry?
Or changing their exploration.
We explore all value parameters, and it's very interesting. We made all type of robustness checks, try different procedures, even Bayesian agents or whatever. You get that. That's really in the type structure of the problem that creates this kind of system.
Initial choices by higher level agents or something will be determined by some payoffs that they're expecting.
Yeah, the initial choices are pretty random, because at the beginning you know nothing. So you try more or less whatever happens, right? And then the sequence with which you try initially will determine your subsequent trials probably, and then you get increasingly locked in the sort of, either you change all the time like a neurotic guy, or you start understanding, you go slower, you get the right thing, your L agent learns, and everything goes smoothly. So clearly have this
initial choices are not determined by any payoffs as such.
No, the first choice, of course, not. Since the second you start, of course. But that depends very much on the payoff you get, depends on what you pick randomly, and that will determine how your attractions change over time, and the reinforcement learning, and it will determine different fates. And we try to have more patient principles, so we said, well, maybe if they don't decide each 5 times, but they decide each 10 times, is it better? No, right? If we have time, we take the only rare condition you can a little bit improve, but only if you have a lot of time. If you have any time of time constraint or a cost of time, it's pretty good, in my view. It's very hard to escape that. Now, to make it short and jump to the second relevant point, at least before some of you has to leave, right? One obvious question is, okay, but this is stupid. Why should the principal give only partial information? What if this goes everything? Then maybe people will do a better thing, right? Well, maybe, because we know there are 2 problems. Well, first, the idea is that processing more information is a little bit more costly, so you can tax a little bit more information. That's reasonable. But especially, that people have limited attention. So we know from normal psychological science, if you give too much information, people learn less. So there might be this problem. And we tried, of course, an experiment in which the principals could provide full information with a real additional cost, right? And so they could give, if they wanted, all the available filter with everything available to the L agent. And you would say, well, 3 out of 2 is not too bad. Maybe people can still manage 3 sources and learn. No. But it turns out that whenever the principal discloses more information, comparatively people do worse. They learn less. So even from 2 to 3, you have a clear sign of some type of information overload that deteriorates the performance of L agents. And otherwise, we reproduce basically the same dynamics in the baseline experiment, so we'll be short about it. So here's an interesting point, which is you need hierarchy, because if you give people full information, you get lost, right? But once you have hierarchy, this is clearly second or third best in economic terms, right? Because, yeah, it works, right, on average, but still, there's a sort of bifurcation. In some cases, you get lost in hierarchical type of exchange of information between the higher and the lower. And that, I think, is the interesting thing. So, in a way, hierarchy, is sort of often stupid, but you can do without it. And that's the pessimistic conclusion if you want to study, but I think it matters for understanding the section. Okay, so that's basically what I wanted to say, right? In this case, as I told you, experiment 2, same type of patterns, not helpful when the H agent provides full disclosure, the performance of the agent is damaged by too much information, and this reflects clearly the idea that more information can be worse for you. Wrapping up, very simple conclusion, I think. First, hierarchical organizational learning process helps to manage attentional constraints, but, right, it generates persistent differences in the performance of the organization. These are very hard to disentangle and to subject. Rather than being caused by individual skills of the boss, as a naive reading of the experiment might suggest, this difference can be caused by the internal dynamics of information exchange. Right? That I think is not, of course, this is a sufficient conclusion, right? So we say it's enough to have that to get this. Of course, if you make maybe a stupid boss will do even worse. But the whole point is that this is enough to get this result, and this is persistent or even over very long spans of time. Not only, but if you try to make the H a little bit smarter, you make it by years, you make it whatever you like, you get fundamentally the same result, right? So, if you want, maybe the experiment is just adding another cautionary note about the attribution error. You see organization failing, you see that there's a clear, apparently, failure in disclosing the right information by the boss, and you conclude it's the fault of the boss, but it's the fault of the information flow in this case, and that's the whole point. Okay, for PhD students especially, and that's my last word, and it's noon, but maybe we have 2 minutes for reaction. I think another thing that we learned is that really you can play a lot. I described the results, but these results are achieved through a sort of dialogue between the model and the experiment, right? So we started with the baseline experiment, we were puzzled, we started modeling suggested other type of questions than a new experiment, and the new experiment suggested other ways to think about the model. So I think this sort of interaction is a very productive one. And the good thing is that computational models from this point of view are a little bit more flexible than standard closed-form models in adapting to the structure of the experiment, because you have more degrees of freedom anyway in shaping it, right? So it's quite easy to perform the experiment with artificial agents, right? And this can teach you a lot in turn about what you have observed in the experiment. So it's not just about, I have the right model, it fits the data. No, I have the right model, it tells me something about something I couldn't understand from the experimental data, and I think that's how it should work, and that's how I would strongly suggest to anyone who practices the experiments, don't forget that experiments alone may not work. You need something like a model. And computational models are, from this point of view, flexible enough to be adaptable to the architecture of the experiment in an easier way and provide very powerful tools. That's it. And I'm starting. Thanks for your huge patience. Thank you. I know that many of you have to escape in a few minutes, and you are ready. But if there's any question or comment, like, I had to go fast, so I hope it was clear enough. So if things to clarify, I'm very happy. Otherwise, any question or thought or comment as well.
Any question?
Sometimes, like, I'm talking about from say public policy or kind of public organization point of view, a lot of information also lies with the LHS or at the lower level. So the thought process that starts with
Sorry. Hello to the students. It was a pleasure to have you here.